Okay, thank you everybody. We're now live. Paul, over to you. Okay, thank you everybody. We're now live. Paul, over to you.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Africa Agri-Tech Development Forum. This is the first event of the forum entitled Digitalizing Agricultural Value Chains for Better Job Creation. Now, my name is Paul Boateng. I'm really pleased to be moderating this session. I was brought up in the Akan tradition, christened in the eastern region of Ghana in a place called Tafo. And in our tradition, when you come into a group for the first time, by way of introduction, the focus isn't on your title, your achievements, your name even. It's not on any of those things. And all of you have got plenty of achievements, plenty of titles, and
inspired by your insights and stories.
The focus and the question you hear. And if you think about it, that's the most important question of all. That's what defines us. And what defines us here today is that we're passionate about agriculture. We believe that agriculture is the key to development, and we want farmers to have of the very best that science, that research and development can provide them in order that they can maximize their livelihoods, in order that we can see maximize their impact on development. And we are very fortunate to have a stellar array of panelists with frontline experience of making a difference. But importantly, we're lucky to have you all, because today and this forum, and I'm going to ask Nick State, the founder of Baobab, to introduce the session. This is very much about you. It's about what you're going to get out of today's session, also what you can contribute to it, and what we can all take from here. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Nick to introduce the session and to give you a sense of how it's going to work today. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Paul, and hello everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So a few things from me to very quickly introduce. First of all, myself and Baobab. As Paul mentioned, my name is Nick State. I'm the founder and director of Baobab. We are an event streaming and peer-to-peer networking platform dedicated to all things African science, tech, and innovation. We work with a really diverse range of clients and supporters to design and deliver events and campaigns that explore complex challenges, identify innovative solutions, and really importantly, promote cutting-edge innovation from Africa and around the world. And we market these events and campaigns directly to our growing online community of science, tech, and business professionals, which now numbers well over 7,000. Now, one such campaign is, of course, the Africa Agri-Tech Development Forum, which is why we're all here today. And the motivation for this came about because despite the sad fact that the pandemic still rages on in many parts of the continent, COVID has presented an opportunity for the whole world to accelerate innovation, ingenuity, and entrepreneurship in life-changing technologies. And Africa has been no exception. And yet, despite the policies, despite the strategic frameworks, the path to scale for African agripreneurs, agricultural entrepreneurs, it's not always clear. In fact, it's often very, very difficult. So to help address this, we created the Africa Agri-Tech Development Forum. And the idea is to bring together a really diverse group of experts, bring them together to explore where and how agri-tech innovation is helping or can help ignite a much needed agricultural revolution across the continent. Now, over the course of this year, we'll be hosting 4 of these forum events. And in terms of today's focus, as Paul mentioned, we're going to be looking at the fascinating world of digitized agricultural value chains, specifically in the context of better job creation and as well as increased food security. Now, conditions are pretty favorable in terms of Africa leveraging food systems for higher on and off farm earnings using digital tech. For example, at a very high level, high population growth, urbanization is driving robust demand for food. And you can see that the cost of imports, which is expected to rise to more than $100 billion by 2030, by which time sub-Saharan Africa's agri-tech sector is estimated to be valued at more than $1 trillion. So some real exciting potential. But at a much more local level, digitizing agricultural value chains could help harness this potential, whether it's mobile payments or e-contracts or AI-based predictive insurance, and can bring lots of benefits to the agribusinesses operating across the continent. Hopefully, as the pandemic gradually shifts from the sort of emergency response we're in now to a recovery and resilience stage, presenting an opportunity to build back better in the agri sector. So really interesting discussion today. One final point from me, a very quick point to mention about the format of today's event. So the key objective of the forum is to facilitate memorable discussion and meaningful relationship building. And in the digital world we now live in, that lots of us are still living in, this is best achieved with smaller, more intimate sessions. So that's why today's event, and indeed all forum events, are made up of 2 parts. So the first part is this webinar, and we're about to hear from our fantastic panel of speakers. The second part, which will take place immediately after part 1, is made up of 2 roundtables that will happen simultaneously. And these are designed to enable a deep dive discussion, as well as providing the space and time required for that enhanced networking. So at the end of this part, the webinar part, we'll be hearing from our 2 workshop leaders, Dr. Gideon Onimar and Folo Akunade, and they'll give you a brief overview of what they'll be talking about in their respective roundtables, and you'll be able to select which roundtable you want to participate in by selecting the corresponding breakout room. But don't worry about that now. We'll cover this again at the end of the webinar, but we encourage you to stick around for part 2, so you have an opportunity to share your perspectives and ideas as well. So that's it from me. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick. And we now move into our panel session. We're blessed, as I said, with a stellar array of speakers, and we're going to begin with Yvonne Pinto. She's the MD of Align Impact, a multidisciplinary strategist and consultant service leader with 30 years plus global experience. And her focus is on agriculture, food and nutrition systems, innovative systems management, innovation, including commercialization strategies, how we bring the fruits of academic research and innovation to the marketplace, to the table, and a particular focus on women's economic empowerment and human capital in international development. And to add to that mix, an early specialization in molecular virology, and then over some 15 years, some work with the Gatsby Charitable Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we couldn't be more fortunate in our first speaker. So over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Lord Boateng, for a very kind introduction. And I'd like to also say thank you to Nick State for the invitation. It's a delight to be here, and I look forward to sharing with you a more broader landscape of what we know in the agri-tech sector. So let me just start by sharing my screen, and hopefully we will be away. Please do let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet. But that's the nature of the beast.
It does tell me that I am screen sharing has failed to start.
Nick, would you like with Nicole to come in and see if you can take it over and put it up there? If not, Yvonne, just bang on. I mean, you know, I've heard you know how you speak, so
okay.
that will be fine.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to start by saying Tanastaling, because I'm actually a Kenyan Ethiopian, Kenyan by birth, Ethiopian by upbringing. So it's a pleasure to be here on an all-African panel, and I'm delighted to participate. I want to give you an overview of the things that we know in the agriculture sector related to digitization, and all of these slides will be available to you. So please don't hesitate to request them if you wish. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. As we know, 70% of the world's food is produced by smallholder farmers. On average, agriculture contributes 15% of GDP. Actually, a report issued over the past couple of days by FAO suggests we have 608 million family farms. They produce 80% of the world's food in value terms. Farms smaller than 2 hectares produce 35% of the world's food. It's really important that sub-Saharan Africa's food system is critical for economic growth, poverty reduction, food and nutritional security, and particularly employment, given that by 2050, there will be 330 million people entering the labor force over the next 20 years. And a recent report, which I'll go into, suggests that the food system has the potential to absorb up to 70% of this workforce. Could I have the next slide, please? So in order to just bring to your attention the challenges that farmers face, and given that they operate in a very large, complex, dispersed and fragmented system, they are really of 3 different types. Systemic, related to the enabling environment in which they find themselves, given and which dictates access to infrastructure, finance and practices and policies, the competencies that they lack related to digital literacy, and the opportunities by those who are disadvantaged related to women, the elderly and disabled, and indeed their environment, where the agricultural value chains are very fragmented. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see a very quick reflection of where those inflection points happen to be. So farmers are really concerned with land preparation, cultivation and storage, and there are many challenges that they face within that value chain. Moving on, please. So I don't want to go into much detail about this, but here is a report called Charting Pathways for Inclusive Growth, from Paralysis to Preparation. And this was the Commission for Pathways report that came out recently. And the key things to take away from here are the 5 possible pathways for prosperity that this report suggested. Now, it was written because there was a misperception that automation would reduce the available number of jobs, particularly related to digitization, artificial intelligence, and so on. Actually, it turns out in the global context that there are 5 possible pathways where technological innovations are likely to create jobs. So raising value from agriculture is one of the key pathways out, including advanced analytics, biotechnology, communications. Another is new global value chains in manufacturing using robotics, new global trade in services using the advantages provided by artificial intelligence, and linking the informal sector to the formal economy by using things like digital platforms, particularly those for mobile money, and integrating services with products. Finally, digital platforms and the advances in logistics and supply chain is likely to drive growth by reducing the cost of moving information and goods around an economy, particularly poignant time for the Africa Free Trade Agreement and the aspirations within. Can I have the next slide, please? So if we consider policies, there are really 3 priorities: creating a digital-ready country by investing in hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure, standards for interoperability, and education, particularly digital capabilities in terms of human capital. Also guiding markets towards innovation to take those innovations to scale, and maximizing inclusiveness to ensure that there's a level playing field, including things like innovative social protection programs and e-government services. Could I have the next slide, please? This is just an example of the Government of Kenya's digital economy blueprint, 5 principal pillars: digital government, digital business, including marketplaces for digital trade and financial services, infrastructure, innovation-driven entrepreneurship, and a very sophisticated model about tying an ecosystem together with small farmers, and digital skills and values. So moving on to the next slide, assuming that we have policies in place, we need to map actually the realities that are faced by farmers. So this is a slide to show you that our world has changed dramatically from what is on the left-hand side, very traditional approaches to extension information for farmers, to one that includes digital means, and also to understand very clearly how farmers receive their data and how they are able to engage with that information. So the world, as we know, it has changed dramatically, accelerated by the pandemic, but it continues to be the case that many farmers have access to mobile phones, and therefore the opportunities are really substantial. Moving on to the next slide. I'm just going to highlight to you some situational frameworks that people are using, and to give you a little bit of information about what's going on. The takeaway message from this is that there is a really substantial amount of work that is underway. It's a very confused landscape if you're trying to navigate your way through it, particularly if you're in the farming community. So there are many tools out there that people have used, and I want to bring to your attention those tools because there's likely to be duplication as we go forward. I'm not going to go into the detail of these. I will as I go through the slides. So can I have the next slide, please? So this is an example of a toolkit developed by USAID, which looks at the constraints in the value chain that farmers face. It identifies what they need help with. And if we move on to the next slide, it shows the actual positions of where data is collected and where transactions are faced for those farmers along the value chain. Now, we know that the constraints in the value chain alone are insufficient. So if we move to the next slide, you will begin to see that there are products, and all of these analyses have been conducted on case studies of actual examples to show how products and services begin to fill needs along that value chain. An alternative framework that is used, can I have the next slide, illustrates the CTA digitization report, which was issued in 2018 and 19, which drew into the system the notion of infrastructure, you'll see towards the bottom end of the slide, and also the enabling environment to tie policies into the opportunity to address particular pain points in the agricultural value chain. Could I have the next slide? This begins to illustrate for you the types of players that are out there in the landscape in areas of advisory services, market linkages, supply chain management, financial access, and agricultural intelligence, which are all related to the agricultural sector. There is much, much more detail available in the CTA report. This is to give you an insight into it. Moving on, there is a third framework that people have used, which is on the left-hand side of this case, which is developed by GSMA, the Mobile Industry Network. And that includes the understanding that farmers can do a huge amount with digital tools, information, knowledge, and opportunities, but often it's mobile money that actually is the entry point for them. So there are opportunities to combine those two aspects. I just want to refer to the map on the right-hand side, which shows you on a sub-Saharan African basis, the number and distribution of different digital agricultural services by use case. And the use cases are identified at the top. So you can see there's a tremendous amount going on. Could I have the next slide, please? I just want to draw to your attention here that most of the people who are involved in digital tool development are very good at the first 3 stages of this process. This is a digital ecosystem. The tagline at the top is very apt. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes an ecosystem to scale an innovation. But the trough of despair happens between proof of concept, stage 3, and transition to scale, stage 4. And that requires a lot of these other players, angel investors, capitalists, people who are involved in private equity, professionals who have business acumen. And so it's really important to understand there is a significant pathway to getting a digital innovation out there, scaled and sustainable in its business model. Can I have the next slide, please? The notion of an agricultural ecosystem that supports the development of digital tools is where our thinking is going in terms of innovation. And you can see this is another publication by GSMA, which has mapped through something called their Ecosystem Accelerator, 618 technology hubs across Africa. These are centers where these innovations can become solutions for farmers with a business plan that is supported to develop them into commercial initiatives that are sustainable. Can I have the next slide, please? I just want to draw to your attention that over the past few years, there's been a transition related to product and service marketplaces. Very simply, people have started with agricultural supply marketplaces. They've also created producer marketplaces. They've begun to combine these services in single platforms. It's important to understand that there is a trade-off between doing what you do very well and beginning to be commercially viable by bundling what you offer with other offerings that make your platform offer a range of services and products to meet larger numbers of farmers and their needs. Could I have the next slide, please? There are 2 types of platforms, those that are about innovation, creation and development, and those that are transactional. And so this is just a slide to show you some of those examples. If I could just move to the next slide. You will also see in this slide the typical functions and some of the used examples in those categories. So again, I will say that all these slides will be available to you. So this is just to give you a picture of how complex this landscape is beginning to look like. Could I have the next slide, please? I want to remind you of stages 4 and 5, which is about transition to scale and scaling and about the importance of business models. So if I could have the next slide, please. That will just give you a sense. This is the notion of a basic business model related to a particular app. So ensuring that you have a balance between customers and their use of that app and revenue that is generated by the use of that app, and that some of that revenue flows back into the development. So it's really important for different types of services. Some are value-added services, some are content provision services. These are really important aspects to be thinking about at the outset of developing your digital innovation. And finally, my last slide, I believe, is about understanding the data and revenue flows. So in the policy space and even in the consciousness of people who are running digital innovations and digital platforms, there is still a little bit of a gray area, which is about the use of data and the revenue that flows around that data. So I just hope I've started to give you an insight into the complexity and the issues and the opportunities in this particular arena. And I look forward very much to answering questions that you may have. Thank you very much. I hope that wasn't too quick for you, but I'm here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Yvonne, thank you very much indeed for that. And thank you for keeping to time. Yes, a confused landscape, but you've helped us understand and get a sense of how we map that landscape and find our way through it, I was particularly struck by your description of that place between proof of concept and scaling. You described it as the trough of despair. I love that expression. We've all been there. We're all looking for a way out of it. And I think undoubtedly available and sometimes concessionary finance and a risk management capacity are a very important part of that. And I hope we'll be coming to that in the discussion and opportunity for question and answers that we will have later. But we're now banging on to our next speaker, Daniel Asai Kei, the CEO of Esoko. And you all know Esoko, it's one of Africa's largest agri-tech providers, been responsible for developing several important innovations in the African agricultural sector. Daniel brings with him a wealth of experience as an agricultural economist, as a technologist, as a geoinformation scientist, and importantly, an entrepreneur. And his passion is to bridge the realities of people living in the rural areas and technological innovations. And that's a passion that has been honed, no doubt, in the University of Bonn, where he got his doctorate at the United Nations University, where he has a fellowship. But, you know, Daniel, I'm sure it began at KNUST, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And one of the benefits, there are not many, but one of the few benefits of being old is that I am the only person here who is able to say I was present at the inauguration of that university. All those many, many years ago. Yes, I was a small boy, but my father was chairman of council, the very first. So I have huge respect for your institution, your alma mater, and I'm looking forward, as we all are, Daniel, to hearing from you now. So welcome, Akwaba.
All right, very well. Thank you very much, Paul, Lord Boateng, for this very generous introduction, and also for being the first only person in this group to have been at the Mama Mater so many years ago. I'm so happy to hear that. And thank you very much also to Nick and his team for inviting me to this important conversation. I just want to go straight to share my screen so we can begin to look at some real life examples of how Esoko is helping to digitize agriculture value chain and why that is important in today's world. So quickly, let me try to share my screen. And please let me know if you're able to see it. Yes. Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can hear you and see it.
Very well. So like I said, I just want to give, I think when you look at what the first presenter talked about, you look at the broader agricultural value chain digitizing scheme and try to map out the various challenges and opportunities within the industry. I would like to probably try to narrow it a bit down to look at practically how agricultural value chain digitization is working in some markets in Africa. And so I just want us to take another look at what she talked about. Population growth in Africa is both an opportunity and a challenge, as you all see. Back in 1950, Africans made up just about 60%, 9% of the world population. Now we are about 60% of the world population, and we expect this to grow by 2.4 billion by the next 2050. Now, currently 70% of African populations are engaged in agriculture. Many of them are smallholder farmers who are just doing less than 2 hectares. But then these smallholder farmers are still producing about 80% of the food that we all eat. Now, Africa food market is very huge. Currently, it's about $300 billion. This is estimated to rise to about $1 trillion by just about 9 years from now. Demand for food is expected to double by 2020. So this is where the landscape where you find ourselves. This is where it shows you that if you want to talk about agriculture importance and for the rest of the world is very, very important. What's even more critical is if you look at the next slide is that in just 29 growing seasons, Africa's 33 million small farms must learn to feed more than 1.3 billion people. are in the face of three major challenges. One is climate change, one is information gap, and one is the lack of real-time visibility into what is happening around the production chain. People are becoming much more conscious about what they eat or where the food they eat comes from. But then there's very little visibility into that. So whilst African smallholder farmers are trying to feed the increasing population, they are still faced with these three major challenges that you have outlined above. Now, if you take a look at history, the world has gone through essentially now about 4 major industrial revolutions. Africa, to a large extent, made the first 3 industrial revolutions. So now we are in the 4th one, and the 4th one is characterized by cybersecurity systems, information technology, robotics, nanotechnology, blockchain, artificial intelligence, but then also big data and data analytics. And this is where, for us, agriculture, as agricultural people, is very, very important. For us to contribute substantially to support Africa to take advantage of the 4th industrial revolution, we need to find a way to integrate agricultural value chain. That is where data can be made available and where decisions can be made as to what agricultural decision making need to be. And so agricultural value chain digitization is fundamental when Africa really wants to take advantage of the 4th industrial revolution that we are all in now. But then to be able to digitize agricultural value chain, you need data. You need to be able to collect data, gather information, and then send that information to people. But then you know how African communities are set up. It's so difficult to provide services in these rural communities. But thankfully, mobile phone now make it very, very easy to be able to collect data, view and transact, and also even do all this at a much lower cost. And this is where Soko has been able to operate along the value chain to see how we can leverage the use of mobile phones and web services to make information and other data services available to access in the agricultural value chain. So I just want to share briefly about some of our experiences when it comes to digitizing the agricultural value chain in Ghana and elsewhere in Africa. So you see there are about 4 or 5 major challenges that we have to face when it comes to digitizing the agricultural value chain. One is supply chain disruptions. There is knowledge asymmetry where somebody, like say for instance, the buyer is looking for something to buy, a farmer is looking for somebody to buy his crop. The two of them don't know that each of them need their services. But how do you bring these two people together so they can actually know what is actually happening around the value chain? There's lack of visibility and traceability in supply chains and lack of access to financial services. That's a very, very major one across many countries in Africa. And so when you look at each of these challenges, the Soko has a solution that has been built around this to be able to provide or to solve some of these things that I talk about. I'm just going to go through some of them into detail. So we have created what we call a virtual marketplace, where farmers can actually sell their crops. So let's say you're a farmer who lives in Accra, you want to sell, you will find a buyer somewhere in the north of Ghana. You are able to go to our platform, post that particular offer on our platform, and instantly, people who are looking for the same commodity to buy can reach out to you, and the two of you can transact the business. This is what we call the base and offer. There's really one good way of actually helping people to be able to actually be in the era of COVID-19, where travel restrictions were imposed, people could now take advantage of this platform to be able to limit their person-to-person movement and person-to-person interactions to actually reduce the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's one good way of how we can digitize a value chain by bringing buyers and sellers together. The second example is what I talk about, the knowledge asymmetry. How do you help people? I mean, if you look at most of the smaller farmers in Africa, most of them are largely illiterate. I mean, I say that literacy is very high, but digital illiteracy is much higher across many countries in Africa. And so how do you support these people to have access to information that are very, very important for them to make very good decisions when it comes to the agricultural production activities? And so I set up a simple platform that allows farmers to receive SMS-based information on market prices, on weather forecasts, on crop production protocols. But then this information can also be delivered via voice. And so people can actually interact with these services using voice channels in their own local languages. Like in Ghana, for instance, you cover about 15 local languages, which are very, very important in the country. And so smallholder farmers everywhere in the country can access our services in their own local language. It is very, very important to bypass the issue of illiteracy and also people's inability to read and access SMS-based services. Now, another example is what you call supply chain digital. How do you digitize supply chain services? How do you track trade transactions when it comes to pickup and deliveries of agricultural inputs or agricultural products? How do you allow off-takers to track data from the field and be able to do even say traceability programs? So our platform, our service have allowed people in the agricultural sector to be able to even choose delivery and pickup location. They're able to add multiple products and confirm their GPS location. So actors in the value chain can actually know in real time where people that they're dealing with are based along the value chain. Now, another example is inventory management and stock control. How do you support actors in the agricultural value chain to even manage their inventory? I mean, like I said, most of the agricultural value chain actors don't have even access to formalized way of doing business. And so they go out to the field, your paper and pen, they try to do all sort of things. But then how do you convert all those processes into a digital space that allow them to be able to become much more efficient, reduce the operational cost, and then also promote transparency within the agricultural value chain? So this service is really very important, where we allow people to take inventory, their stock levels, so they can actually restock their fertilizers, their inputs, their crop protection chemicals in almost in real-time basis. Another example that I really want to highlight is digital payment. And this is becoming very, very important across many sectors in African agricultural landscape. And so as you can see, like if you take like East Africa or West Africa, mobile money payments are becoming very, very fundamental when it comes to digital transactions. And so we're looking at how do you support farmers to receive payment for their crops that have been purchased at the comfort of their homes. Like those of us who grew up in the cocoa growing communities in Ghana in the past, our parents would have to go and wait at a very long queue in a bank just to receive their cocoa money. Some that they have to spend 2 or 3 days just to get their money from the cocoa buying agencies. Now, with this kind of platforms, a farmer can just sit at the comfort of his village, and then whatever he has sold to an agent can be paid to him or her through mobile money wallet. This is very, very fundamental when it comes to digital agricultural value chain. Digitalizing payments is very, very key. The challenge, however, is that most of this kind of thing works very well in the structured commodity chains like cocoa, coffee, or the high value crops. But for the smaller farmers who are now normally dealing maize, soybean, sorghum here and there, it's going to take a bit more effort to get all these people to be able to get into the digital platform where payments for their commodities can be made through a digital channel. But thankfully, there are several providers, like in Ghana alone, we have Vodafone Cash, MTN, Airtel. I know in ESO in Africa, there's M-Pesa, there's all over the place. And this is growing very, very fast. And for us, you see that this is going to be a game changer when it comes to integrating the informal sector into the structured economy. I mean, you see the way the African agriculture is set up, most of the farmers, like I said, are illiterate. So they are largely not integrated to the formal economy. You don't know what they are doing. So for that reason, they can't even access credit. They can't go to a bank and tell the banker that, look, I have 10 acres of mango plantation. I'm producing 10 tons per year. And so based on this, give me $1,000 worth of credit. This bank don't know anything about this farmer. But the moment you have all these farmers now being able to access their commodity money through a platform like this, you can build that transaction history that over time can be used to build credit profiles, credit scoring, and this farmer can gradually be integrated to the formal economy. And for that is very, very going to be very, very important when it comes to digital agricultural value chains for almost every commodity in Ghana. Now let's look at some opportunities in the sector. So I'll talk about.
We're going now, Daniel, to have to speed up a bit because I've got my eye on the clock.
Right. So I mean, if you look at currently about 30 million in West Africa alone farmers that have access to mobile phones. Now all these farmers can now be made to be integrated to the proper digital economy where they can have access to digital services like financial services like credit, like insurance, or even to information or to mobile money payment service that is out there. I mean, if you take input services and the value chain digitization programs, $30 billion worth of inputs is distributed to farmers across Africa every year. Now, how do you digitize this process so that this input distributed to farmers becomes seamless, becomes transparent, becomes much more efficient? I mean, if you think about other small businesses that operate in the agriculture sector, as much as 49% of them are still using paper-based records. How do you support these SMEs to be able to now transition into the digital space so they can digitize their operations? I mean, for social protection programs, throughout the world, there's about 1.9 billion people that are beneficiaries of social protection programs. These are areas you can actually digitize very easily so that people can sit at their comfort of their homes and they receive their card transfers, either from the government, from NGO, almost within the same time that the money was made available. So there's an immense opportunity when it comes to digitizing agricultural value chains and digitizing rural payment services is concerned. So just to kind of wrap up pretty soon, just a bit about the SOCO you've been running for the past 13 years in Ghana. You've reached more than 1.2 million smallholder farmers across 20 countries. In Africa, with digital services, you've created more than digital footprints for about 4.7 million people in rural areas across several countries in Africa. So you've been it created jobs. So this session is about how do you use digitize the value chain to create jobs. I mean, through our program, you've created more than 5,000 jobs, mainly for young people who have completed university, don't have anything to do. And so this can tell that if even one company, one business can use this digital platform to create as many this kind of jobs, if you have all these businesses really run at scale and really have moved from the stage where you want to talk about to the scaling and the transition phase, the amount of job that could be created in the agricultural value chain in this space will be enormous. So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to engaging all of you in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you very much for that. Thank you for your focus on how market-led solutions can play such a critical role in terms of bridging that gap between the frontline farmer and the best available information and knowledge. That gap, that capacity building, so very important. And you're highlighting in the way that you have done the importance of spreading digital literacy, key going forward, and the role of mobile telephony in terms of payments. And that leads us very much in to our next panelist, Gabriel Tito Agana, who again is a graduate of KNUST. You guys get everywhere, and he brings to us a wealth of experience. He has been a player in this field for many years, working with the telecommunication instruments, industry, governments, regulators, international donor organizations, and working on those value chains in order to accelerate the transition from cash to digital payments in order to reduce poverty and drive inclusive growth on our continent. And currently, he is the project lead for mobile for agriculture of MTN Ghana. And we're just so pleased to have you with us, and we look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Over to you, Gabriel.
Yes, thank you very much to Nick. Thank you very much to everyone, and I'm very grateful to be part of this session today. Now,
Gabriel, at the moment, we're seeing a wonderful picture of your wife and son on our screen. So okay, I presume that's going to be, in due course, a digital presentation.
I'm just attempting to share my screen now. I think you have my image. So whilst I just attempt to share my screen over here.
Don't worry about it. You can hand that task over if you want to Nicole and Nick and just talk to us.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you see my screen.
Nicole and Nick are working on it, so don't you worry. You just go ahead and talk.
Okay, all right. So just by way of introduction.
We can see your screen. It's great.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So I'm particularly impressed by the introduction. I also happen to be an alma mater of the KNUST. KNUST is one of the leading universities in Ghana, which Lord actually spoke about. So just to go straight into what we do, I'm sure my business, MTN, is not new to anyone. But if COVID-19 has taught us anything, we have come to learn that what we do provide here at MTN Ghana, and specifically with our mobile financial services, is generally a day-to-day necessity. So as in, we provide very essential services, because during the COVID era, what has happened is that our platforms have been used worldwide to connect people during times of lockdown and others. And so much of what we provide are basic commodities. These are basic necessities that people provide that are relevant to people's day-to-day needs. In respect of our contribution in the agriculture sector, Over the last 2 years, let me say from 2009, since we rolled out our mobile money services, we have worked with the agricultural sector largely. About 70% of Ghana's rural sector, or let me say 70% of our population is involved in agriculture space. And that is a very huge and significant portion of our population. And so if rural is largely involved in the agriculture space and with a service like our mobile financial services, to be able to penetrate that space, it is very important that we're able to design solutions and services that are specifically human-centered and targeted at this rural infrastructure. And so over the years, to give you some statistics, to date, we have over 150,000 agents and merchants across the country. A lot of these are located in rural areas. We also have these merchant infrastructure that support the mobile money ecosystem, play a very key and significant role. And so over the years, for all the work that we have done within the space, we have come to understand what is involved in providing for the needs of the agriculture sector, providing for the needs of smallholder farmers as well as agribusinesses. And so as a business, what we have done is to design solutions that meet the needs of this segment of the people. And so what we also think is that as a business, providing all of these essential services, we think it's important that everyone benefits from the connectivity solutions that we provide. And we put this as very high on our agenda, that people are connected. As well as within the COVID era, we have come out with a new strategy, which we coined as the Ambition 2025. And Ambition 2025 specifically is built to support the largest and most valuable platforms around Africa. You know, we operate in Africa and other parts of the Middle East. We're also intending to drive industry-led connectivity operations, which includes the agricultural sector, which is the mainstay of our people, as well as to create shared value for our people, for the people that connect with us, for families, for businesses that are on our networks, as well as to accelerate portfolio transformation within the economies that we operate in and within the markets. We currently operate in about 21 markets. And agriculture sector is invariably one of the major players. And so as part of that, what we have done over the years, I've heard a lot of my colleagues speak about GSMA. Fortunately, we are in a number of partnerships with the GSMA supporting us to drive this. We are an MNO. And so a lot of the support we do get from GSMA, as well as we are also in partnership with a number of other organizations, including Isoko. Daniel is somebody I speak to very often. And so the whole idea is to ensure that some of the platforms that we drive is generated and driven by other partners who are within the agriculture space. Because what we do think is that for the agriculture space, to be able to drive and to scale, it's important to connect with other players who are also within the same space and to convert some of the needs and some of the necessities within the area. And so looking at the prerequisites for rural connectivity, as well as to be able to support the agriculture space, connectivity is one of the most important overriding key things that needs to be able to provide within this rural economy. So connectivity, first and foremost, is a prerequisite that must be provided. Liquidity is as important as connectivity. Liquidity in itself means that within the rural economy, where these are our agents and merchants provide all of these essential services to rural folks, to farmers, how much of liquidity do they have to be able to support the entire agricultural value chain? Regulation too comes across as a very important factor for people who are very conversant with Ghana. Over the years, we have had issues with our national identification systems, and we do have a lot of scattered identification platforms which are not consolidated, though there is currently a number of initiatives attempting to consolidate all of these identification platforms to ensure that we are able to use these platforms into other derivatives as well as identification. Looking at the issue of identification, you would be able to do what we call know your farmer. So know your farmer means that how would I be able to profile my farmer bases? How will I be able to profile the farmer databases for various agribusinesses, as well as for the sector, which is a very important part of the entire conversation when you speak about the agriculture sector, because other derivative services that comes out of this, for instance, if you're intending to provide things like micro insurance, micro loan services, many other derivative services that comes out of this, it's important to be able to identify and build some digital picture of your farmer bases, so that things like building credit scores is enabled, and many other very salient and essential other services that come into play. And so looking at this next slide, this is what we as a business, based on our human-centered engagements with our farmer bases and the many years of work within the agriculture space, we have come to identify these as pain points that farmers and as well as the agriculture sector and agribusinesses have been encountering over the years, as well as looking at what it is that a digital platform or an emigrate platform that we provide today, what are the solutions that we should provide? What is important to farmers? What is important to agribusinesses? And based on the work that we have done, information services is one of those that is very key within the space that can promote expansion, that can promote scale and others. And so payments comes across as one very essential. The first and second speaker made mention of that. And fortunately for us, we do command over 80% of the payment ecosystem with respect to mobile money in Ghana today. And so that is a capability that we have, and we are riding on this capability to be able to support the agriculture sector, which majority of our people are currently today involved in. Identity that I did mention is a very important factor that will drive this entire initiative. So being able to identify your farmers, profile your farmers, and build a certain picture, digital image about these farmers and agribusinesses, to be able to support funding initiatives, as I mentioned, the likes of micro pensions, micro loans, and other micro services. Traceability comes across as one very important factor as well. So agribusinesses, whilst they are moving funds, whilst they are doing their daily activities, want to be able to trace transactions, want to be able to trace their money, want to be able to trace their resources within the ecospace in real time. And so the platform that we have built, which is the Emigrate platform, provides all of these capacities, provides all of this real-time visibility on a simple dashboard that enables agribusinesses as well as farmers to be able to monitor in real time what is happening on the field. Monitoring.
Tito,
yeah.
If you could begin to draw this presentation to a close, because time is of the essence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so I'm just giving you a summary of some of the primary use cases that our platforms currently prioritize on the system. So we do provide monitoring capabilities on a dashboard where you are able to monitor all of these. We also provide advanced analytics on the platform, and our platform enables agribusinesses and various actors and players within the ecospace to be able to monitor all of this. Next, I take you to my next slide.
Your final slide.
Yes, most likely. So these are some of the things that we have been doing within the space. Our current platform provides a number of primary use cases. We do digital procurements, which allows people to do procurements. We also do payments, which I mentioned through various channels, USSD app applications. We also provide platforms that allows for farmer profiling and lookups. Lookups is very important because it allows for verification of identity of farmers, which is very essential to the space. We also do very advanced analytics. In the future, as part of our roadmap, we are looking to provide data as a service to support other value chain actors within the agriculture sector to be able to drive some of the initiatives that are currently in play. So this slide gives you just a picture of some of the channels and platforms that we use to drive our service. I will not speak too much about that, but the dashboard. All of these are also mobile first, so it allows very basic use of feature phones for various actors to be able to. This is just a simple value proposition of the platform that we provide today. As well as we also think that digitization of the agriculture sector is a pathway to financial inclusion. And financial inclusion has enormous economic and socio-economic benefits within the sector, within the agriculture sector, and even outside of the agriculture sector. Financial inclusion is very critical within the space. And so promoting financial inclusion through digitization and transforming the agriculture sector is very key. And so we are looking to create economic identity for farmers within the agriculture space, which would allow for other value chain initiatives to be able to be driven. Data is important to this entire discussion. Track and trace capabilities are very important as well. And with the enormous amount of data that we sit on, we are willing and able to provide this support to other value chain actors within the space.
And we end with access to funding, is that right?
Yes, we end to access with funding. And finally, and thank you very much. Yes, but my slides will be available as well. So for anything that we weren't able to reach through, the slide will be available for everyone to have a look at. But
thank you very much indeed for that, Gabriel. It's a presentation full of gold nuggets, and we will want to see those slides. But I was particularly struck by the point that you make that liquidity is as important as connectivity. That rings very true in the experience of farmers all over Africa. And that brings us very much now in our last panel presentation. And would you please, those of you who got questions, who want to make points, why don't you put them in the chat so we're able to curate them whilst our next speaker is talking, because I want to move straight into the conversation, the question and answer session. But we're blessed with our next speaker because it takes us straight to the field. It takes us straight to where it happens, where the seed goes into the ground, where the harvest is brought home. To take us there is Folu Okunade, who is the CSO and COO of Hello Tractor, responsible for shaping, for executing, measuring that organization's growth strategy and operations. He brings a career experience as a senior manager with Accenture, well known to you all. He's driven agricultural systems change with his work at the NEPAD Business Foundation, and specifically within the CAA DP program, and all of that built on a firm academic foundation in the United States, the University of St. Louis, and importantly in Africa, because it is part of Africa, at the University of Cape Town. So over to you, Folu. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Lord Boateng, for that generous introduction, and thanks to the team, Nick and team, for the invite. I hate to break the Ghana love, but I was born in Nigeria, so not too far from.
Don't worry, we forgive you.
And I'm joining you all from Nairobi, Kenya. So happy to be here and to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which I will share just now. You can all see my screen, right? You all see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. All right. So as Sir Boateng mentioned, my name is Folu Okunade. I am the CEO at Hello Tractor. Hello Tractor is an agri-tech startup that started in 2015 in Nigeria, and we've since expanded to other areas. Today, I want to talk specifically about what we call the FAAS or FAS, Farming as a Service solution that we provide for smallholder farmers and mechanization service providers. The benefit of going last, or the curse of going last, is that a lot of these stats have already been mentioned by people that are much smarter than I. So I don't have to go through too much of that, but really to set the scene in terms of why we're in this business and what we're really trying to solve for. As mentioned before, there's over 500 million smallholder farmers in the world. They produce and grow the majority, 70 to 80% of the world's food. So it's not a contingent that we can ignore when it comes to food security. Equipment happens to be their largest expense, and the lack of equipment actually contributes up to 50% of the yield gap in this space. When we look further at the issue of manual labor versus mechanization, we see that a lack of access to mechanization actually contributes to the cycle of entrenched poverty, food insecurity, gender productivity gap, and ultimately jeopardizes security within communities, within the country, and within the continent. We've seen this happen over and over again. Compared to manual labor, mechanization is 40 times faster. You can do in a few hours what it takes a month or so to do with manual labor, or even with oxen, which is what a lot of our customers also use. The cost of mechanization, especially as you go across the value chain of production, is actually two and a half times cheaper than using manual labor. And we saw this actually not just from a cost, but also from an access perspective actually come to play last year, and still today during COVID, where a lot of farms utilize migrant labor for their services. And when movement restrictions are restricted by things like COVID and other issues, that becomes a real issue with yield, as well as having the right produce to be able to feed yourself or sell further on to the market. There's a heightened uniformity in terms of growth and height, and as I mentioned, there's improvements in yield as a benefit of mechanization. So that's really on the farmer side. Then we also look at on the asset owner side, the tractor owner side, and we see that the opportunity is huge. There's 1.7 million tractors that are sold every year to entrepreneurs serving small farmers. This is by far the largest number of tractors that are sold in the market, right? There's fraud and inefficiencies that reduce the revenue potential for these asset owners by up to even more than potentially 300%. And we see Africa being hit hardest with billions of unserved demand. To kind of go further on that, if you look at the tractor availability or the mechanization access in sub-Saharan Africa, it pales in comparison to the rest of the world. The graph on the right here shows that the global average for tractors per 100 square kilometers of arable land is 200 tractors. Sub-Saharan Africa is at 8. With other actors like India at 128, which is still below the average, but they're growing at a much faster rate. If we look at the tractor deficit, for example, for Nigeria alone, Nigeria has almost 750,000 tractor deficit. Kenya has about 130,000. So there's a huge need for mechanization to be able to reach the food potential that we need. How do we catalyze investment in this space? At Hello Tractor, we look at making service delivery to smallholder farmers cost efficient by grouping farmer demand. As we heard from previous speakers, part of the problem is the fragmentation of farms. There's not large tracts of contiguous farms. And so the need to cluster the demand and to make it economically viable for tractor owners to service that demand is important, and that's core to the model at Hello Tractor. We leverage IoT data that comes off of the tractors to provide asset owners reassurance that their operators and their field teams are not defrauding them, they're doing the right things, and they're not site selling or siphoning fuel. And ultimately, we want to create a business case, or we are creating a business case for additional investments in tractor assets on the continent. Going back to an overview, we are currently in 13 countries. In Africa, we're in 3 in Asia. We started off as a tractor dealer, looking to make smart tractors with our technology. Because of a few factors that were happening in Nigeria at that point, we pivoted in about 2018 to really just focusing on our technology, being tractor make agnostic. And that actually enabled us to grow at the rate that we've been growing, and also to make the investments in the marketplace that we've been able to make. Our solution really starts with an IoT-enabled device, that a telematics device that sits onto tractors. We install that onto tractors. It comes with a SIM card. We don't unfortunately use the MTN SIM cards at this point, but maybe we will. And that allows tractor owners to be able to track their assets. It allows them to be able to manage their fleet a lot better, receive necessary maintenance alerts or location alerts, manage and maintain their fleet, understand their fuel consumption, manage their operators, and also integrate into things like weather. We also have a booking application, which this is available for farmers and booking agents. We leverage the use of an army of community-based booking agents to act on behalf of the farmers to help them book services from the tractor owner. They also act as last mile liaisons between the tractor owner and the farmer, there to make sure that the tractor gets there on time, that the work is adequately done, and then they rate the work once it's completed. What do we see as the future trends for this market? We think it lies in, and other speakers have said this as well, it really lies in big data fueling the growth in this sector. The Hello Tractor solution starts with onboarding a fleet owner. We include marketplace services into the mix and introduce them to additional farmers that helps them grow their income. We help them optimize their route using the data that we've collected over the number of years and specific to their tractor. By accessing more farmers, increasing their demand, reducing their cost, they're able to improve on their profits and ultimately grow their fleet due to the liquidity that was talked about by the previous speaker. We've also introduced a pay-as-you-go financing structure that helps farmers utilize the data as collateral to be able to finance additional tractors into the fleet and hopefully close that gap that I talked about earlier. We see an important aspect in really focusing on strengthening integration points using IoT and data and machine learning capabilities to enable the fleet management and location-based booking. There's a need for the IoT data to really close the gap on information and trust and to offer a single source of truth, especially for underwriting assets. Our routing technology as well that we've introduced and we're constantly improving on helps to optimize the tractor owners and the farmers and the connectivity there. And we believe that as we continue to improve on this product, it'll continue to reduce the cost of owning a tractor or owning a fleet of tractors and increase tractor owner profits. And lastly, again, as reiterated by others, marketplace services are vital to this space. And by that, I mean wraparound services that's not just looking at mechanization. We believe the mechanization is one of the key clogs. Like I said, it accounts for 50%, up to 50% of the yield gap. But there's another 50% that's still out there, right? So how do you provide access to inputs and retail markets, financing, after sales support, and other climate smart offerings to protect the environment and to increase the yield for farmers? And that's all things that we're that we're working on a daily basis. Lastly, we've seen that this model is impacting lives of our farmers, and we're really proud of this. This is one of my favorite slides to present. You know, we've the farmers that were surveyed. This survey was taken last year, even during COVID. Stated 93% improved their overall quality of life, 96% improved their way of farming, 87% increased their revenue. So these are just some of the metrics that make me sleep better at night when I think of some of the impact that we're having and the additional impact that we could have bundling other services and other aspects into our marketplace. I will stop there.
Thank you very much indeed for that. You know, we're glad that you sleep well at night. But that's not surprising, because this is such an elegant and smart solution to the very real problem that you have outlined. And it's fascinating looking at your slides to see, yeah, you are in 13 African countries, but you've expanded to 3 Asian ones too. And I think that's very, very heartening. Because it's about South-South cooperation. It's about Africa-based solutions that are capable of benefiting a global issue, as your slides around tractors so effectively demonstrated. So it's smart and elegant. It's a pity about the jollof rice and the football, but never mind. There you are. I
wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't going to bring it up.
I'm quite sure you weren't. But good, we've been blessed. I'm sure you'll all agree with our panelists. Now, we're really cutting it short for time, so I'm just going to take 2, maybe 3 questions and put them out there to the panel. The first, and it came up from Dr. Onuma, it would be good to hear from Esoko and MTN initially, and it arises out of this very powerful phrase that Yvonne shared with us around the trough of despair, how you bridge the gap between innovation and scale. So I wonder, Daniel, why don't you kick off with that? What's Esoko's approach to that particular issue?
Yes, so I think that is a very, very important and fundamental question. I mean, if you look at across what is happening in Africa now, there are several startups that are developing various solutions aiming at agricultural value chain digitization. Most of them, only few of them, actually do manage to go beyond the first 5 years of the establishment. And so to really transition between the startup phase to a scaling phase is quite fundamental. I think what helped is so cool is that we learned at first, almost at early on, and that we cannot expect a smallholder farmer to pay for information services delivery at that time. I mean, you all know that information is key, information is important, but information alone is not enough to drive down productivity increase or drive down poverty. Even those of us here who are on this platform, if you go to any website and you're looking for any information, you're asked to pay $5, you are more likely going to switch to a place who can get it for free. So you can't really expect anything more than that from a farmer. And so in the past, we only largely relying, do what we call a B2C approach, where we expect the farmers subscribe to our services and they can pay for that. That didn't really work. So you change the business model quite fast, and then you also add on other services that can actually give us much more revenue. So we move into just the provision of information, to actually providing actual tangible service that farmers are actually looking for. And other actors in the value chain also need to be able to improve their business operations. So you move into a digital, the actual digitization space where we are digitizing, helping people to digitize their supply chain, digitizing data collection, conducting large-scale surveys. That gave us a lot of money to scale up our services beyond Ghana to other African countries. And so I think that is what people need to understand, that you need to scale up, and you need to scale without a smallholder farmer having to be the main cash cow for your company.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tito.
Yeah, thank you very much. Additionally, just to add to what Daniel said, so I think within the agriculture space, scale as a business, you need to be very patient. The agriculture space is quite a very huge space, and usually it is important to take your time to learn about the space, to learn about what is important, and to go through a human-centered approach to really understand what is important. To build any platform, that platform must be initiated by the users themselves. And so you're not designing solutions, or you are deciding and making a determination that within the agriculture space, if I provided this service on the market, it would be good for a certain group of people. But you need to go through a very carefully painstaking process to speak to the people, to step into their shoes, understand what are pain points to them. And out of that, you are able to turn around their challenges into opportunities, as well as to target this space. Maybe what we over the years haven't done is to understand that the pain points that come within the agriculture space are interrelated. And so designing a solution, you have to look at the entire ecosystem and design solutions and provide them a whole ecosystem of agriculture services. And so not providing one service at a time, but you are providing them a host of other services that provide pain points that are interrelated and that are important for various value chain actors. So these are my comments for that question that has been raised. So providing a of solutions is very critical to the space. Thank you.
Thank you for that detail. Yvonne, what's your, I mean, it was your phrase, what's your experience taught you about bridging that gap?
Thank you, Lord Boateng. I think it's a really good question. I would say there are two camps. There are people who are backed by large companies and organizations. Most of those are in the mobile industry. So they are already working with customers and they are able to offer these sets of bundled services. So the opportunity to scale those is resourced significantly. There are many others who are startups, they are single entities, and that transition is probably longer and it's more fraught because they don't have the kinds of resources behind them. But I think a very good question that's asked is, what can farmers afford and who pays for these services? There may well be business models that government pays for. There may be business models that are public and private. There may be shared value propositions. We have all these opportunities to investigate, but generally speaking, because, and I make this statement in very general terms, it's not unique to Sub-Saharan Africa, it happens here in the UK too. We've got software development engineers starting up these solutions without agriculturalists understanding whether the solutions actually deliver what we want them to deliver. Now, if we put those two things together, our evidence is, and it comes from a lot of GSMA's work and others, farmers will pay for this because it's valuable to them. But until we know that the solutions are delivered on a broad scale, it's very difficult to ask for payment services up front. So that scaling is really dependent, as Daniel and Gabriel said, on human-centered principles, which are the basic principles for digital development. I hope that helps to give you some idea.
That's extremely helpful. And it stresses the importance, actually, of the sort of work that Nick is trying to do with BOBAB, because it's about putting the tech savvy and the farmer together and getting them to talk to each other and at the right stage early on. And that's a very important point. I've got another point now. We're really up against it with time. So if you would give, please, brief answers to this, and I'm going to come to all of you on it, about affordability. I mean, some great solutions here, but you know, how are we going to afford them? Follow, why don't you give us some insights into that?
Sure. And actually, it piggybacks directly from what Yvonne was just talking about. I think in the startup space, we simply call it product market fit, right? Making sure that your product is what the market is looking for. Farmers are willing to pay. We've seen that. They have the means to pay. A lot of them do. It's really just around making sure that your products and services meet them meet the demand where it's most needed. So we actually have the problem of having farmers year after year that actually couldn't get the services because we didn't have enough assets on our platform to provide those farmers the services that they needed. So I think that as Hello Tractor, we actually have a model where we don't charge the farmers anything over and beyond what the tractor business and the tractor owners and the mechanization service providers are charging. So we charge the asset owners who are already buying the equipment, so they have more liquidity than the farmers do. So that's how we kind of resolve that issue.
Thank you. Tito, affordability. Any thoughts?
Yes, so when it comes to affordability, usually I think first and foremost, as a large organization that we are, a lot of times we are able to meet farmers as well as agribusinesses halfway through. And that is understandable because when we look at scale, we're able to reach a certain number of farmers or agribusinesses before we do look at the commercial models around it. As well as it's also very important to let the users use the platform and appreciate the benefits and the efficiency that will come out of it. And then based on that, they are able to make a trade-off and pay for the service. It is really very difficult from a very onset to charge a certain rate to users when they do not have a real appreciation of the potential profit or the potential benefits that will be making out of it, or the potential savings that will be making. But after, for instance, after a full season, if they have used your platform and they do understand that, look, for the last 2 years that I didn't use this platform, these are the losses that I made. These are the inefficiencies that came out of it. And over say a 6 months period or a 1 year period that I have used this platform, I've been able to make a certain amount of savings. And so can I make a trade-off based on that? Can I say, can I dedicate 20% or 10% of those savings I have made using this platform to paying for the cost of it? This would give appreciation to the users. Yeah.
So it's about trade-offs. How do you agree with that, Yvonne?
Thank you very much. I would agree with that point. Trade-offs are extremely important. I would say that we haven't investigated fully this notion of shared value. So it's absolutely the case that you have to make the proposition clear to farmers. They have to indulge in it, and they have to be able to see the benefits to afford it. But if you are going to grow your customer base, you yourself could subsidize the cost of making that available. In essence, it's a bit like market research. You have to extend yourself in order to develop your market. And in this field that's relatively new, that does have to happen. I think that the other way to think of it is that these digital solutions address pain points in the value chain. So they actually save agribusinesses significant amounts of money that they might have spent with their agent models, their extension agent models, their financial services provision agent models, etc. And so that shared value proposition really is something that should be able to find the balance between providing services that farmers, ordinary farmers, can afford, that give them the benefit and the value that they desire, but are also cost effective for the businesses. So we think of the agribusinesses as intermediary organizations who are able to take these products and services B2B and then extend them B2C. So I would say we need to do a lot more experimentation, and we need to define what works, and it will be different in different contexts.
Thank you very much indeed. We've had throughout this session the chair of the all-party group on agriculture and development, a pioneer in this field, Lord Ewan Cameron, with us. He's had to go on to another meeting, but he just wants to say a big thank you to the panel and the participants, and to you, Nick, for enabling this to happen. But I think it's just a sign of how important this conversation is. that policymakers and legislators like you and have spent time to be with us. Now, before we move into the breakout sessions, into the round table, I'm just going to ask this question that's come from Scale Up Africa, and I'd like it really short replies, but it's an important question, and it's really addressed specifically to the impact that the likes of Hello Tractor and Asoko are making. I mean, do you see yourselves as part of a drive to larger scale farming on the continent? You know, we talk a lot about the small farmer, rightly so, but is what you offer at Hello Tractor and Asoko, is it part of a move towards larger scale farming? Folu?
So I'll start by saying something that I hope is not controversial, but I think small scale.
It certainly will be.
Right. What a great lead-in. Small scale farming as they exist today are not sustainable for the future. And that's why we take, you know, a large part of our model is to cluster and aggregate the demand of small scale farmers. And the more that the small scale farmers can be grouped and start behaving as larger farms, maybe not your large commercial farms that you see in South Africa, for example, but larger farms with a lot more buying power, with a lot more access to markets. That's what we believe is actually sustainable, right? So in our model, we provide a platform for equipment owners, but we don't force equipment owners to do what is not economically viable for them to do, given their unit economics. And so I'll give you an example. If a tractor owner is 25 kilometers away and gets a request for 1 acre of land for plow, the cost of fuel to get to that farm is much higher than the revenue that they're going to receive for that 1 acre. And so, you know, when the farmer calls us to complain and says that the tractor owner didn't come, well, you know, we have to explain that this is not Uber. It's not an urban setting, and it's just not viable for them to service that one acre. What we encourage farmers, and through the use of our booking agents as well, is to find farms in a 5-kilometer radius of their farm, right? Cluster that demand, request those, you know, 10 farmers that you can get together, or 15 or 20, request that as a clustered demand in the application. That demand looks a lot more attractive to a tractor owner if they have to travel and use fuel to do it. So my entire point is, the more we start trying to cluster and have small scale farmers behave as larger scale farmers or medium or emerging farmers, I think that's a much more sustainable model than treating individual farms individually.
Thank you. Asoko, in your experience.
Yes, I think that's a very, very important question, and thanks, Amma, for asking that question. So essentially, what we are trying to do is to optimize smallholder agriculture. I mean, just like Folu is saying, it's very, very difficult to work with these farmers in isolation. But what you've seen is that to change smallholder farming in Africa requires a lot of structural changes within the economy itself, right? So if you take Ghana or Nigeria, for instance, if you look at land holding, the culture of land tenure system, it is very, very difficult for any person to get 1,000 acres of contiguous land for commercial farming, especially in the southern part of the country. If you go to the north, it may be different. And so it's going to be very, very difficult, even in the short to medium term, to change the face of small agriculture in Africa. What we believe is possible is to what Folu was talking about, get these farmers to organize into kind of a block farming concept, where they begin to act or behave as commercial farming in nature. But the individual, they are still individual farmers who are being supported to optimize their production practice. That's what I think is what we are driving towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Tito. Any thoughts?
Yes. So I think for us as a business, providing some of these solutions to the market, I think it goes beyond just making profits. It's more of providing a basic necessity to a certain group of people, a certain group of small-scale farmers. And so the more compelling motivation is to be able to support them to get to a point of sustainability. So for us, for the major part of the time, we would concentrate on small scale farming because a majority of our people are currently engaged in small scale farming. To be able to support them, to be able to help them to move out of that space of the way they currently do things, and to be able to bring them into a more sustainable way of engaging in this economic activity. So for a large part of our engagements, yes, we would be involved in supporting small scale farmers with the hope that we'll be able to support them to a sustainable level, as well as be able to help them to come more into the formal space. So yeah, we'll provide solutions to large scale farming as well, but our key focus will be to support small scale farmers to be able to scale. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, Yvonne, there you have it. It seems less controversial than I thought it would be. Are you going to say, hold on a minute, there is a future for the small scale farm?
I am going to say that, Lord Boateng.
I thought you would.
3 points. 80% of the food that is produced in value terms comes from small scale farmers, but we always talk about them as individuals. So Follow's points are very well made. There are farmer organizations, there are farmer federations, there are opportunities for them to work together. In the digital space, there are all manner of marketplaces that look at aggregation, e-warehousing, receipting, even the Ghana Commodity Exchange, a platform set up by government, but with a view to become private in 10 years' time. There are real opportunities to address the inefficiencies in the value chain by using digital solutions. Consider another aspect. Our ecosystems in agriculture are fragmented. So these digital solutions provide employment, off-farm employment for many households who are traditionally farmers. And so the opportunity of bringing those two income sources into the farms means that the opportunities and capital that small farming families have is a different proposition. So I think our vision should be small scale farming will continue for all sorts of purposes, including land ownership and traditional expectations. But the models that we present and the opportunities that they can provide are going to revolutionize the opportunities for food security and nutritional security in Africa. And we've just got to stretch ourselves to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for that call to action, because that's what that was. And action is what the next stage of our time together this afternoon is going to be all about. We're going to move now into roundtables. Nick is going to facilitate that. The roundtable discussions are going to be led by Folu, who you know, who will be leading one, and I'm going to ask him to give a very brief introduction in a moment to his roundtable. The other roundtable will be led by Dr. Gideon Onuma, who's already asked that very interesting first question that we started off this discussion with. But Dr. Onuma is the principal agricultural and marketing economist at the Natural Resource Institute of the University of Greenwich. And I'm really thrilled to have you with us, Dr. Onuma, not because you are Ghanaian, that helps, but because you are principal agricultural marketing economist of the University of Greenwich, of which I am Chancellor. So I had nothing whatsoever to do with the selection of any of this panel, but I'm really, really glad that we've covered both KNUST and University of Greenwich, and of course the very best that Nigeria, Kenya, and Ethiopia could offer. So we're truly a Pan-African institution. And you bring, of course, Dr. Onuma, a wealth of experience at the NRI to this discussion, but your knowledge and experience of commodity sectors, food crops, grains, as well as export crops, the promotion that you've given over the years to modern agricultural marketing or financial institutions, whether it's warehouse receipt systems or functional agricultural commodity exchanges, well, it's been groundbreaking in its impact. So thank you very much for joining us. So now I'm going to ask very briefly, please, I would like you, Folu, to introduce your roundtable. I'd like Gideon to introduce his, and Nick will then curate your choices so we can move seamlessly into the next session. So over to you, Folu. You've got a minute.
Thanks, Paul. I'll be very, very brief.
It's like speed dating. Imagine you're at a speed dating session. I've never been to one, but I've heard about them. So you just imagine you're.
I've always been terrible at them, so let's give it a go. One of the buzzwords, around marketplaces and digital marketplaces is around communities, building communities, sustaining communities, maintaining communities. That's something that we at Hello Tractor and our partners talk about almost on a daily basis. So the breakout session is really around how do you build sustainable digital communities that are sticky. We talk about the stickiness factor. What are some of the barriers and challenges and opportunities in that space?
Thank you very much. Dr. Onuma.
Thank you very much, Paul. I call you Paul, unlike Daniel and Tito, because even though I have the same Ghanaian alma mater as them, KNUST, I have the privilege of being with University of Greenwich, where I am not encouraged to call you by your title, but by your first name.
Indeed.
So thank you all very much. And we've heard so much about what opportunities digitization is creating in the agricultural space. And we want to focus very specifically on using the platforms that are being developed to facilitate access to agricultural extension and advisory services. We know that there have been so many e-extension platforms developed in many countries, largely because we don't have enough extension agents on the ground. But COVID has taught everyone, even if you have more than enough people on the ground, you can still have challenges in terms of delivery. So that is creating additional pressure to deliver extension via digital platforms. But one other issue that is growing in importance is that it's no longer just going to a textbook and finding notes about how many bags of fertilizer to apply per hectare. It's all about the changes in climate and the pressures that it's bringing and the shift towards agroecology, which means that the advice given cannot be one box for everybody. So this is what we want to have a discussion about, and I hope that you join in my session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Gideon. Great. Nick, over to you to break us out into the sessions that we're going into now, the roundtables. But before you do that, I think we'd all want to give a big virtual clap to our panel. So thank you very much indeed, panel. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Paul. And yes, just to say a very quick thank you to all our panels, absolutely fantastic presentations and a fascinating discussion. But it doesn't end there. We've got more to come. So yes, we have 2 roundtables coming up now. It's very straightforward. You can select your own roundtable. So you heard there from Folu and you heard from Gideon. Gideon will be in roundtable 1, breakout room 1, and Folu will be in roundtable 2, breakout room 2. You just, for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, you can navigate to the breakout rooms by clicking at the bottom of your screen on More, and you should be able to see the 2 breakout rooms there. So you just need to click on the one you want to go to, and you will be taken straight to that breakout room. So hopefully that's all quite straightforward. I'll wait here for a moment or two just to make sure everyone's assigned. If you have any problems, just put your hands up and I'll talk you through it. Gideon, if you'd like to go to your room, please. And likewise, Folu, if you'd like to go to yours. When you're there, we'll give it a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone settles in. And then we can begin the roundtable session. So thank you very much again, everyone. And hopefully you can find your way to your rooms now, but let me know if you have any problems.
Nick, let me speak up. I can't see where a more is on my screen.
Down at the bottom, Celia, you should see share screen, polling, record, reaction, more, near to the left of end?
No.
If I could interrupt you, Nick, you might see a little square that says breakout rooms. And if you click on that square, you have the choice to visit one of those rooms.
Thank you. Nick, I'm not listed as unassigned.
I can assign you, Celia, actually. Just bear with me. I'll assign, you're going to follow, aren't you? So I'll assign you. Yeah. There you go. Please, anyone else who's having any problems, let me know and I can assign you to the breakout room that you want to go to. Anyone else, please let me know, write a chat or a direct message if you're having any trouble, and I'll assign you to a room. Alternatively, I can assign you one at random. Okay, so just a couple of people left to assign. Tito, please do let me know who you'd like, whose room you'd like me to assign you to. Kenny, Antoinette, Keith, if you'd like to let me know, I'm happy to assign you now. Okay, anyone else? Please let me know.